Hit it! Hit that bitch! Hit that!
It's almost impossible to live without dashcams these days. This little piece of equipment has become such an important requirement that it's almost absurd not to have one. Dashcams can record unforeseen circumstances, accidents, even forensic evidence in the event of a crime.
Ah, get the get out of here, fast! What the
But what if you happen to witness something unnatural through your dashcam? It could be frightening as ever to see something ominous and spooky captured on one of these devices. That's exactly what today's video is all about. We've searched the internet for the spookiest dashcam events imaginable. From paranormal encounters to unexplained phenomena, this is sure to be one heck of a list.
What's going on?
Number 1. A scream from a hooded man. In the north of Sydney, Australia, a man was traveling down a dark road in May 2015 when he came across a parked truck. The driver then reduces speed as a man in a hood approaches the vehicle. The hooded man yells into the car's window as it passes by, and the driver races off in complete terror. The hooded man reportedly also approached the driver's wife, who was following him in her car for approximately a minute, according to the Newcastle Herald. In her statement to the newspaper, the woman claimed, "I almost stopped before I could go around this guy, and as we went past, he just lunged at our door." When the cops arrived, they discovered the man dozing off inside the truck. He was accused of having crystal methamphetamine in his possession. Number 2. A humongous spider. Now this may not be the creepiest one on the list, but it is sure an unpleasant sight to see a gigantic 8-legged insect through the lens of your dashcam. In fact, there's no need to bother, because this video clearly illustrates what that would look like. After a normal traffic stop, a Texas police officer returns to his patrol car, and a huge spider can be seen running across the road behind him. Fortunately, the video is a little misleading. The police officer saw a typical spider creep over his windscreen, giving the impression that a huge mutant spider was sneaking up on him. Even though giant mutant spiders would be scarier, this still makes for some really unsettling video. Number 3. The strike of a powerful lightning bolt. Mitch Baker, an Australian, was driving his automobile through a rainstorm on June 11, 2014. The dashcam video starts with Baker pulling over and his headlights shining on the grass in front of him. A lightning strike hits his car in a bright blaze of light as soon as he starts driving. A frightening and rather empty metallic sound that sounds like something was slapped on the car's hood accompanies the flash. Fortunately, only a warped brake disc was damaged, keeping both Baker and his car in one piece. Despite escaping the situation unscathed, Baker was probably rattled and grateful for his good fortune. Number 4. Ghost car. Now this one is bound to leave you with a couple chills. Everyone is aware of ghosts. We all might even vouch for having seen one. What about ghost autos, though? If dashcam footage is any indication, this is not an uncommon occurrence. An automobile that appears to appear out of nowhere in the middle of a crowded crossroads was filmed in Russia. However, this police dashcam clip may be the source of the most well-known ghost automobile footage. During a pursuit, the driver twists his car around, passes the police car, and then abruptly disappears. The automobile appears to drive through a metal fence as the police appear to have caught up with him. They are powerless to do anything but marvel as the red taillights disappear into the night. Number 5. Creepy roadblock.
What's going on? Can I help you with something?
Ivan Tuktin saw something pretty disturbing while late-night traveling on the New Jersey Turnpike. 2 traffic cones, a black automobile, and a man wearing jeans were all in front of him. The man is only visible in his blue jeans walking towards Tuktin's automobile on the dashcam, which clearly captures the cones in the car. Tuktin sped away while navigating the traffic cones since he was feeling appropriately
What's going on?
unnerved.
Can I help you?
Although it is undoubtedly creepy, the cops think there is a reasonably innocuous explanation behind it.
He walked over to the car. As a good Samaritan, you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt because you don't know what's going to happen. At which point I saw him reach into his pocket, at which point I knew something was going down.
The police discovered, after examining the area and detaining two guys, that their car had run out of gas on the highway and that the driver had erroneously attempted to call for assistance by setting down traffic cones. Number 6. Clown. Nothing gives the creeps more than a loud and noisy clown in the dead of night. The year 2016 was peculiar. Individuals started terrorizing innocents while dressed as clowns for some strange reason.
He's running after us! Hit it! Hit that bitch! Hit that!
As you might expect, dashcams recorded several sightings of clowns. A police cruiser observed 2 unsettling clowns in October 2016 as they stood by the side of the road. In Yorkshire, England, a sighting that was much creepier was reported. The family was traveling down a dark road when they noticed a clown crossing the road in front of them. The clown then began to approach the car while waving. One of the scariest practical jokes in recent memory, but also one of the riskiest, as evidenced by the Yorkshire clown almost getting run over. Number 7. Julyabinsk meteor. This meteor being caught on a dashcam was probably alarming enough to scare people and make them think the world was ending. The Julyabinsk meteor may be the spookiest and most well-known object ever seen on a dashcam. On the morning of February 15th, 2013, this meteor traveled through and detonated above the Russian region of Julyabinsk. Many dashcams in the region managed to film the meteor, which was seen as a dazzling bolt of light cutting through the sky before exploding. In certain instances, the meteor even illuminates the surroundings, turning dusk suddenly into day. Although it appears to be something out of Armageddon, there were just 1,500 reported injuries and no fatalities. Given that the meteor's strength was estimated to be 33 times greater than that of the Hiroshima bomb, things could have been far worse. Number 8. California fires. The wildfires in California in the year 2017 were a dangerous occurrence that will probably never be forgotten. More than 9,000 flames destroyed more than 10,000 buildings, scorched 1.5 million acres of land, and claimed the lives of 47 people. The media and the terrified public both recorded footage of the wildfires, including this dashcam video from the 405 motorway. The automobile actually appears to be traveling through hell. The freeway's vehicles are greatly eclipsed by a mountaintop that is brightly lit by smoldering flames, turning the night sky into an unsettling color of smoky orange. The video looks like it was plucked out of a movie about the end of the world, but it's actually quite real and very unsettling. Number 9. Taiwan rock slide. A terrifying incident in which a falling boulder almost crushed a car and its occupant was caught on a dashcam while traveling along a road in Taiwan. Imagine how frightening that must have been. A boulder detonates from the hillside above as the automobile passes underneath the mountain. The white car in front of the driver is thrown off course by the heavy dirt that falls on it. When the dust settles, a nearly 300-ton boulder that just missed the car can be seen wobbling next to it. It seems that large rocks, steep hills, and rain don't go well together. This is frightening to see since it resembles a scene from a catastrophe movie. Number 10. A Texas horror story. Think of these 2 Texas patrolmen who pursued a car after it crossed the street, only to see it pass through a chain-link fence.
The fence at the end means no way out.
Yes, the car just disappeared through a chain-link fence, and these officers saw the whole thing happen right in front of them. The officers themselves claimed they examined the fence, and there was no way anything could get through it in that way. However, a number of explanations have been advanced regarding what precisely occurs in this footage during the course of the chase. And there you have it. Did this video get you a little spooked out? Feel free to let us know in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click on the tiny bell icon on the side to stay notified and updated on all of our upcoming content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next